Anti-government and anti-paying for what he uses rancher Cliven Bundy has had a lot of success and a lot of allies up until today. Listen to what the New York Times is reporting. Bundy was quoted talking to his supporters saying, "I want to tell you one more thing I know about the Negro." He was driving past a public housing project in North Las Vegas, and in front of that government house, the door was usually open and older people and the kids, and there's always at least a half a dozen people sitting on the porch. They didn't have nothing to do. They didn't have nothing for their kids to do. They didn't have nothing for their young girls to do. And because they were basically on government subsidy, so now what do? They abort their young children, they put their young men in jail because they never learned how to pick cotton. And I've often wondered, are they better off as slaves, picking cotton and having a family life and doing things, or are they better off under government subsidy? They didn't get no more freedom, they got less freedom. So, conservative media, how do you like your Ayn Randian hero now? Now look, to be clear, the list of reasons to oppose what Cliven Bundy is doing is very long, and there are a lot of great things on it already. This racism doesn't even list all that high, I don't think. I have a much bigger problem with the fact that his supporters have pointed guns at federal agents, that they've willingly said that their strategy, if they have a confrontation with the feds, is to put women in the front so that we'll see them on the media being slaughtered. Okay, I think that those are worse than the racism, but interestingly enough, those haven't disqualified him from support from conservative media, from conservative politicians. No, it's the racism that I think is probably going to do that, and that theory is being tested right now because, you know, we had the news broke that he said these things, and already it is everywhere around the internet. And I think it's ironic that Cliven Bundy this entire time, for 20 years now, has thought that he is so much smarter than everyone else, that he can just get away with grazing his cattle on the federal land, not paying like other ranchers have to, and he would just totally get away with it. And he thinks he's so smart, and yet he can't see the irony that this is a guy who, even when he was paying back in the day for the taxes, was mooching because that's subsidized grazing land. He's not paying as much as he normally would have to use that land. Now he's not even paying that. He's an even worse moocher, and he's talking about how these blacks, these Negroes in government housing, they're the moochers. They're the ones who are living off of the government. No, Cliven Bundy, you're the fucking moocher. And here he is talking about cotton, picking cotton. Dude, you didn't grow up in the 1840s, okay? You're not that old. He's not looking back on this like wonderful time that he imagines slavery was. No, he's just a modern day fucking racist, okay? His ranch doesn't even go back that far. Did you hear that? He's been talking about how his family's been using that land since like 1876. It doesn't go back nearly that far. It's just been another in a long string of lies from this now racist thief rancher. And I'm sure right now there are people who are trying to defend him. There was already an editorial, I believe, in the National Review saying, oh yeah, well, you know, people who defended the Alamo, they probably had some deplorable views as well, which is true, but I think that this is definitely going to do damage. It's a lot harder to stand behind this guy after he's said these things. That's the weird way that America is built right now. You can try to shoot the feds, okay? You can threaten to allow women to be shot, but the racist comments are probably what's going to disqualify you from the public eye. Like I said, the racism itself is not the worst thing about Cliven Bundy, but I think it's going to be a lot harder for the average American to support what he's doing and for the people in the media to support it. You see politicians backing off, some members like Scarborough's attacking him and stuff like that. It's a lot harder to get behind a guy with such deplorable views. And understand, nobody is actually surprised that this Western rancher has some old-timey views when it comes to race. That doesn't necessarily show anything. The fact that he's willing to stand in front of a group of his supporters and vocalize those thoughts, that still does say something in 2014, that he doesn't understand how far the country has progressed. He thinks that he can still vocalize these outdated ways of thinking. And to those of you who have supported Cliven Bundy and feel like, you know, he was really fighting for something and now that fight is going to be derailed by this, I really don't think you should feel like you've lost anything. The guy was a con artist from the very beginning. He was talking about how he was using an unused resource and he was just doing it so he could put meat out on the market for Americans to eat. That's not why he was doing it, okay? He was doing it to enrich only one person, himself. He was doing it for the same reason that chemical companies dispose of waste in rivers and fracking companies mess up your groundwater and all of that. They did it to enrich themselves. They did it because they didn't give a fuck about the people who would be harmed by it. If he cares so much about helping the average American, how about he pays his fucking bills? And before Cliven Bundy hits the old dusty trail and fades away from public view, I do want to point out that I love the stupid things he said about the feds backing down, saying, you know, they're too scared to do anything. It'll take a couple of years before they're willing to try anything with him again. Cliven Bundy, you moron. They didn't back down because they were scared of you and a couple of dozen morons with handguns and rifles. If they wanted to, they could have slaughtered you all at a second's notice. They didn't do that because they didn't want to be forced to do that, because we normally operate in a world where they don't have to use crazy violence to get people to follow the rules that everyone else follows. They could have killed all of you if they wanted to. They didn't want to have to. And I love the hypocrisy that conservatives think that this is such a clever strategy in this case. You know, you put the women out front and the feds won't want to shoot them. How wise of them. But you don't like it when terrorists use it. You don't like it when they put women and children in sites where they're hiding weapons and things like that. You think that's terrorism at that point, potentially. For some reason, not terrorism when the Bundys are doing it. Weird, the distinction there. Now, of course, at the end of the day, I could be totally wrong, and the racist comments from Cliven Bundy could be forgotten by tomorrow. Republicans, conservatives in the media could pretend like it doesn't matter, and it's possible that the rest of the media will follow along. I hope that that's not the case. If you think that that might be the case, feel free to let me know. Let me know what you think about the Cliven Bundy situation. Are these racist comments going to be the thing that puts him over the top and people are finally going to see him for who he really is? Head down below the like button, leave me a comment about that. And of course, if you're not a subscriber yet, now's just about the right time to do it.